Hey, while we're on the subject of unbelievably blighted reminder of how we're incapable of building things anymore, you guys see this little news snippet on the Chipping Warden Green Tunnel, where the fine people of the United Kingdom, mostly pensioners, complained about a train line being built because seeing a train would trigger them or something. So they insisted that it be built in a tunnel underground through farmland, exponentially multiplying the cost of the construction just so that some 80-year-olds nearby don't have to see a train go by. For anyone who's bullish on Andy Burnham, by the way, Andy Burnham was asked in a recent Reddit AMA questions about what he could do to change the fact that nothing gets built anymore and everything is dying. And his answer was, we need to ask local communities more questions about how they're impacted by the construction. His answer was, we're going to make it worse. We need to do more focus group testing on the local impact of construction, which is the reason why this is happening, by the way. The reason why they're doing this. Now you're just sitting in the dark when you ride the train instead of getting to see your own country. Yep, incredibly stupid. But, you know, look at this. What an unbelievable waste. Digging up a field just to put a railway in. HS2 could cost up to £103 billion and may not open until 2039. This is the Chongqing railway station rebuild in China. It cost $16.5 billion and only took 3.5 years to complete. Their high-speed rail, 350 kilometers per hour, cost just $6 billion and took 6 years. Yep. Wow, look at that. Unlike our Penn Station, they actually get to have chairs to sit down at because they're not so paralyzingly afraid of homeless people that they're afraid to put down any seating. That's cool. Oh, man. Give me that coverage. Good to know that it's not just California that's fucking up in this regard. Insane waste of money. Don't worry, it'll probably never be finished anyway. A Western economy will collapse long before this is meant to be done. Why? Is there like no coverage of this whatsoever? It's literally just like HS2 Ltd's YouTube channel showing little, it's like beep boop penis music. Here's a BBC segment from a month ago.
Hello, it's Adam in the newscast studio, and I will not be getting a high-speed rail line from West London to the centre of Birmingham anytime soon, because the flagship HS2 programme...
particular size and shape, we call it the caterpillar box.
Wow, that is an enormous hole.
One conveyor belt, whole length.
5.5k long, 6k long. Yeah.
7k by the time it gets there.
The government says HS2 is now going to...
This is not meant to be done. It's meant to go on forever to rent seek. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Remember, the point is not to build high-speed rail because the point of capital is to make money. It's not to do anything. They were delighted when local boomers said that they wanted it to be dug underground and put in a tunnel because that means more money. More money to flow from the state and its tax base into the billion contractors involved in the construction of this. It doesn't matter if it ever opens. It was never meant to open. The point is not for it to open.
Cost more than £100 billion. You want to know how you spend that much money on a railway? Let's go and have a look and find out. Thank you. This is the Victoria Road crossover box. It's at the heart of a 13-kilometre tunnel under West London. That way is Birmingham, this way is Euston, and eventually HS2 trains will fly over points here in either direction. Now, they were supposed to be heading through these tunnels by Christmas this year. Now it won't be for another decade at the earliest, and they won't get to Euston until possibly the 2040s. Meanwhile, the budget has soared, and the only thing slowing down is the trains. Now, this is unquestionably monumental construction, but how has it come to be, in the eyes of so many, a monumental waste of money? HS2 was originally supposed to cost £33 billion. So far, £43 billion has been spent. The government now says it could cost more than £100 billion. That will make it the most expensive high-speed railway line on Earth, and it won't even go to its original destination. It was meant to run to both Manchester and Leeds, but those have both been cut back because of cost, leaving just a single line to Birmingham.
Phenomenal. It's actually like more of a joke than the California high-speed rail. Yes, spiritual fucking Bakersfield, man. 100 billion pounds for a slow high-speed rail line from London to Birmingham, which is like, pardon me for being an American here, can't you just drive this? It's not that far. It's walking distance.
It will first stop at Old Oak Common in this direction before eventually a tunnel will take it all the way to Euston in central London, possibly as late as 2043. These tunnels were built yard by yard with layer upon layer of concrete. The problem with HS2 is less the concrete than the fact, in the jargon, it was gold-plated, designed to the highest specification for the world's fastest trains. That meant not cutting corners, but eliminating them.
How much did China's entire high-speed rail network cost? That's really tough to calculate. The entirety of it, Google AI, and I think that might be like the closest estimate we're going to get, says about 300 billion to build out its initial foundational grid. But keep in mind that's a high-speed rail network connecting like a significant portion of an enormous country of 1.4 billion, not a not even completed high-speed rail line between two cities.
Going in straight lines, well, that costs more money. The risks of the project weren't properly understood. Designs kept changing and there was constant political pressure. And eventually, HS2 Limited, contractors and the government lost control.
The UK is a joke, but Europe can do it. Wrong. Europe could do it. High-speed rail development in Europe has been stalling and worsening for decades for exactly the same reason as everywhere else. Increasing capital acquisition, financialization. It's the exact same deal. Same shit that happened to Amtrak, same shit happening to HS2 and California high-speed rail. It's the same thing everywhere. These countries are better, but they are still capitalist, which means they are still subject to these same economic laws that demand their decline. We are all going down. For a brief window of time, the West was capable of building. That time is long since passed and it will not return.
I can confirm today that it could cost almost as much to cancel the line as it would to finish it, while delivering none of the benefits.
So what is this government going to do about it? Well, they won't be cancelling HS2. Putting things back as they were, well, that would cost as much as has been spent already. The trains will be slowed down to 320 kilometres an hour, the same as a Japanese bullet train. That saves a couple of £1 billion. Some back office roles are being cut, and the people who delivered the Elizabeth line are now in charge. There's no question when this is eventually finished, it will be a world-class railway. But the journey to get here, well, that's been a national embarrassment, and fixing that matters. From energy to data centres, from airports to our water network.
The costs are a fucking joke. Well, that's evocative. How much does 1 centimetre of HS2 cost? 4,231 pounds. Phenomenal. Centimetre by centimetre, they cross the great fields.
HS2 is in a hole, but they are going to keep digging. The transport sector...
The high-speed rail from Warsaw to Ostrava in Czechia is being stopped by some Ruroids mad the line's going to demolish one house. It's the same shit in Europe and the USA. Yeah, and keep in mind, like, capital is fine with this. The big rail barons or whatever the fuck trying to do this Rail Baltica, they don't care. They're fine with it. All the delays mean is that all their workers, contractors, lawyers, all just get paid for longer. It's just more fleecing. Trust me, the only one who loses is you because it's your tax dollars that fund the whole thing. Shouldn't the inability of capitalism to build or do anything cause it to fail? It just might. It just might. The Rail Baltica project, the high-speed rail line aiming to connect Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, is facing substantial challenges. Initially projected at 6.2 billion USD, the cost is now 8.7 billion. Oh, it's going to get way higher than that. A significant increase driven by a confluence of factors. Blah blah blah. It's the same shit as everywhere else. It's always the same shit. Same story everywhere.
He says it would now cost almost as much to scrap it as to finish it. And even though the high-speed line won't go north of Birmingham, it may now cost north of £100 billion.
If this seems like an obscene increase in time and costs, it is because it is. And if it seems like I'm angry, it is because I am. I am angry on behalf of taxpayers and affected communities who have been swindled by the failures of successive Conservative governments.
It's true that the early years of the HS2 project were beset with delay and cost overruns, with HS2 Limited failing to maintain tight control.
Same thing with the German section of the Brenner Tunnel project. The CSU and Freie Wähler parties want more tunnels for their Ruroid voters and NIMBYs. Again, it's not actually about them prioritizing the wishes of the NIMBYs and the Ruroids. It is that the longer this goes on, the more money they get to steal from the government. That's the point. What you have to, this is the Omni segment. This is the seeing the code of the Matrix. Once you realize that all of these projects are just ways for the capital class to take tax dollars and make them their own and reinvest them into like stock buybacks so it never gets spent out as wages again. Once you realize the reason everything works this way, you realize there's no coming back from it. It has nothing to do with any individual competence. It's not one law. It's everything everywhere, and every year it gets worse. It's been getting worse for a long time. There was a brief bubble in between like the 1930s and I would say charitably the 1980s, but realistically probably the 1960s, where the full productive capabilities of the West were, I wouldn't say completely utilized to real ends, but at least somewhat. And as a consequence, for a brief window of time, at least over here in America and in many parts of Europe, we were able to build like we've never built before. We were able to build gleaming projects, you know, rail, highway networks, bridges. We were able to really put it to work. But that time is gone, and we will not be returning to it. Those halcyon days, yeah. Of course, it's worth remembering that it wasn't just the 1950s we were productive. Right now, we are less capable of building cities and bridges than we were at any point during the 18th or 19th centuries. At any point, in 1802, in 1873, in 1891, in 1901, at all of those points, it was easier, cheaper, and faster to build new infrastructure than it is today, by orders of magnitude. So much in the same way that web designers strive to make their pages less efficient, so they overwrite the efficiency increases of modern hardware, so too have we not just compensated for modern construction technology, but overcompensated. Now, in spite of better technology, everything is 100 times more expensive to build, sometimes more than 100 times. Why? Because every company, every corporation, and every government worker are complicit in a system designed to maximize exactly that outcome. We need to expand the Army Corps of Engineers to build everything here. It's not, there's no fixing it. There's no fixing it. You are fighting against the spin of the electron. You might as well grab a photon and try to straighten its wavelength with your bare hands.
Of the budget, and frankly, Department for Transport allowing them to get away with it.
HS2 was originally supposed to link London to Manchester and Leeds. Now it will only go from London to Birmingham. Trains were supposed to start this year. Now they may not run until 2039. And we were told it would...
More tax dollars. This is all the point. Lol, why? Because that was the point. That was always the point. I'm telling you, this project will never be finished. Neither will California high-speed rail. Western economies will collapse before they're even close.
Cost £32 billion, but now the price, including rolling stock, could be as much as £102 billion. Why is this so much more expensive than expected?
The original estimates were wrong. They were inaccurate. and they're provable to be inaccurate, and the project completely misunderstood the processes required to acquire the land for it and the resources needed to acquire the land.
The project has such a bad name that even...
Genuine question, how they build railroads and stuff in America back then. Back then, there was a lot more external pressure to actually build things because the main way a company made money was by selling goods and services. If you were a railroad baron, the only way for you to really make money was to build the damn railroads. Now, American railroad barons in the form of Amtrak deliberately cancel their own routes because they would rather just only run the hyper-optimized ones so they can get the best possible return for their investment. No, labor costs have nothing to do with this. We've been over this. Labor costs have nothing to do with it. Neither does like modern safety. That's all cope. It's an attempt to rationalize the fact that in spite of the fact that everything should be easier and cheaper because technology has allowed us to produce more efficiently, everything is actually much, much, much more expensive.
As we covered in another video, rail transport in the UK is in a bit of a mess.
The amount of companies involved in the construction and development of HS2 is 3,500. Oh, I'm sure that's necessary. I'm sure. Listen, I know that in the past, literally nothing has ever needed that many companies, that many hands in the pie. Like rail networks, you just need one or maybe a couple, you know? Building construction, you just need a couple. Everyone, for all time, you just needed a couple of companies to do a thing, to work together. I'm sure now it's necessary there are 3,500 working on HS2, and that has nothing at all to do with the exorbitant cost that keeps going up and up and up.
At the moment, the whole franchising system just didn't really work out as was intended, with rail journeys costing more than they would have done when it was introduced. So it must be good news that the UK government has a project underway to try and upgrade and improve the British rail network. Modern, fast trains with new stations and infrastructure is surely a no-brainer, and something that few people will complain about, right? Well, provided that it doesn't cost too much and the project is well managed, then yes, probably. But this project we're going to talk about today hasn't been well run. It's seriously over budget, and just in the last week, there have been rumors that some major planned parts of the project are being cut in order to save costs. So in this video, we're going to take a look into HS2. We're going to start by explaining what the project is, then explain why it's got so expensive, and then take a look at what could happen with the project in the near future.
It sounds like HS2 is a lot like the F-35 program, where so many people were involved in the production that it became a poison pill to oppose it. Well, yeah, of course. Why would you get in the way of the money machine, the transfer of tax dollars to the hands of thousands of private companies that benefit? You wouldn't want to make them mad, would you? You wouldn't want to lose your next election, would you? You wouldn't want every single media pundit on earth who are all paid by a small conglomerate of media corpos that pay them to, you know, recycle corpo propaganda. You wouldn't want them all to suddenly turn on you, right?
Once it's fully up and running, HS2 will allow people to travel from Birmingham to London in just 52 minutes, down from the current...
I'm begging you, check out on YouTube how Madrid Metro is insanely well designed. Okay, I genuinely don't know. Was Madrid Metro built before the advent of global capital? 1919. Yep. Sorry, buddy. That was back in the... Listen, you can learn all the good lessons from that you want, but it's not going to make a difference now.
1 hour 22, and get all the way up to Manchester from London in just an hour and 11 minutes, all the way down from the current fastest time of 1 hour 54 minutes. The point is then that the reasoning behind creating a new high-speed rail network is solid. Its execution, though, leaves a lot to be desired. That's because the project has been beset by a variety of problems that have, from the very start, driven up the cost. So in this second part of the video, let's explain why HS2 is...
God, it's so fucking blackpilling, dog. With literally century-old technology. 1916 to 1918, conception and financing. Imagine conception and financing of a city's rail system being done in 3 years. A royal decree approved the 4-line plan for the creation of the Metro of Madrid. The engineers who created the plan began the process of raising 8 million pesetas to begin the first phase of the project, the construction of Line 1 from Sol to Cuatro Caminos. Carlos Mendoza made contact with Enrique Ocaran, the director of Banco de Vizcaya, who offered 4 million pesetas, blah, 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 Spanish words, doody-doo. Made a brochure to persuade people to make donations. This shit was so cheap back then, you could panhandle to build a metro line. Back in the day, you literally just had to hold out a hat and be like, excuse me, are there any like moderately wealthy businessmen in the area who would like to give over a tiny fraction of their net wealth? And they'd be like, yeah, why not? I was going to build an opera. The king intervened and invested 1.45 million pesetas of his own money. The first phase of construction was finished in 1919. God. 1919. It took 1 year to finish the first stage of construction. Just one line for 2 miles. 2 miles underground in a major metropolitan area. 1 year. 2 miles of tunnel. The king, the royal family, and others took part in the first official metro ride, which went from Cuatro Caminos to Rios Rosas and took 40 seconds. There they stopped for 1 minute before traveling to the Chambéry station, which took 45 seconds. The trip went all the way to the endpoint, Seoul. The king and his family then rode the metro back to Cuatro Caminos from Seoul, this time without stopping. The whole journey took 7 minutes and 46 seconds. After the journey, a lunch was served on the Cuatro Caminos platform, and the engineers were congratulated for creating a miracle. During its success, the company decided to expand more, created 12,000 new shares to sell to the public to raise funds for further expansion. The very next year, expansion of Line 1, construction of Line 2. 100 years ago, 100 years ago, they were able to build out not just the first line, but an expansion and Line 2 in just a couple of years. Is it possible to do things like this ever again? Not under capitalism, no. They've gotten too good at rent-seeking. Scroll down to the 1990s expansion. Yeah, but there's more text here. Work went on a major expansion of the metro beginning in 1995 with 107 miles of new line and 132 new stations opened by 2011. Okay, holy shit, that's actually really good. The average construction pace throughout that era, 6 miles of new line per year, was among the fastest in the world of that time. Pretty dang good. That's actually really good. Isn't this basically how the New York City Metro got built too? Super good and fast back in the early 20th century? Yes, and impossibly expensive today. Since 2008, the process of expanding the network has significantly slowed. The 2008 financial crisis stalled many expansion projects that had been in their pending stages at the time, while during the 2010s, improving the existing network was considered a higher priority than enlarging it. Hold on one second. Spain, what am I looking for here? Velocity of money chart. Hold on. I'm going to find what I'm looking for. I'm not seeing money velocity. What about percent of GDP as wages chart? Share of labor compensation GDP. Is this for Spain? Yeah, that looks about right. We don't have very good long-term data because of Franco. We had a peak over here during which they were able to do lots of line construction. Oof. Naturally, I think this doesn't even tell the full story. I don't know enough about the Spanish economy to like derive from it the same conclusions that I have derived in America. You have to watch the video on this. What video? The video? What about the video? What video? What about Copenhagen would build to metro somewhat recently? Listen, I'm not saying it's literally impossible. I'm saying that due to modern rent-seeking methods, it has become unbelievably expensive to build anything these days, and generally speaking, that makes it impossible to do. Just like it's not financially viable. Copenhagen, you're referring what to the M3? Cost vastly more, including inflation, like accounting for inflation, than what the Spanish metro would have back then. And it's only getting worse in Copenhagen too. It's right now at its worst in America and the United Kingdom. America and the United Kingdom are the most captured by financialization because America is America and the UK has a enormous disparity between its GDP and the valuation of its stock market. The London Stock Exchange is massive compared to the wealth of the United Kingdom. America is very wealthy, but we also, of course, have the most money slurped up into capital. Why Madrid's metro is insanely well designed. I'll watch this on my own time. Maybe. I don't know. I'll keep this in the tabs list. We're almost done. It's 3 o'clock. Oh, you poor thing. I mean, it's been a rough news day. Brother, it literally addresses every issue you brought up these days about financialization, public consultants, and everything. The Spanish built their entire high-speed rail network 30. Okay, then maybe I'll cover it on stream. It'd be fun to see. But keep in mind, just because they were able to do it then does not mean we can do it now.
It's become so expensive. When the project was first announced back in 2010, the first leg of the journey from London to Birmingham had an estimated cost of about £16 billion, which, when accounting for inflation, is about $22 billion today. However, just so far, this leg has ended up costing £50 billion, more than double what was expected.
Do you not think the Chinese government knows what happens to the West and already has countermeasures? I'm not saying I expect you guys to have red capital because that shit's long and there are video games to play, but like, you have to understand, you can't. It's capitalism. China is capitalist. They can forestall it as long as they want. It'll happen to them too. It is an inevitable consequence of the economic incentives that already exist. Well, I think the real black pill that you have to take as a Marxist is the understanding that policy, as water flows downhill, policy in a capitalist system exists to reaffirm that system. You can only wall against it for so long.
And shockingly, the same price as the total budget for the entire project back in 2015. Now though, the whole project is expected to cost more than £100 billion. When we compare this to other high-speed rail projects across Europe, we can see that the UK is expected to spend far more money per mile on HS2 than other comparable schemes. According to The Times, just phase 1 of HS2, which connects London to Birmingham, is expected to cost about £319 million per mile. And as you can see, that's a lot more than the high-speed connection between Stuttgart and Munich that cost Germany just £70 million per mile, a price which was already at the higher end of costs for European high-speed rail networks. It is worth saying, though, that these comparisons may actually be a little unfair, but that's something we'll get back to in a moment. Nonetheless, with the cost so much higher than expected, we thought it might be worth talking to an expert on this matter to find out exactly why this is. So we sat down with Gareth Dennis, a rail engineer, writer, and expert on this topic. We asked him what he thought the three main reasons were for the project costing so much.
Lilith Transwitch, it doesn't work that way in China. Political will in China can at times temporarily and somewhat redirect the interests of capital to align with state incentives. But that is not that's not the same as like overturning the inevitable entropic decay of the incentives of an entire like economic system. You know, you can manage capitalism as much as you want. The decline is inevitable. China might last longer than we do, but that does not fix the problem.
But so there's three things are big projects instead of delivering a strategic program, a lack of investment and a lack of commitment from central government, and a high level of fragmentation in the industry. Those three things combine to make those costs really quite a lot higher than they should be. So
let's examine this in a little more detail. Speaking specifically about the fact that HS2 has been done all as one project, Gareth explained this.
That in the UK we have an obsession, a fixation with big projects and not delivering strategic programs. So most other high-speed rail projects in Europe, you don't deliver the whole thing from big station to big station as one project. There will be a big station remodeling project. That'll be its own thing. You'll then build a bit of high-speed line, and that's the thing that people are comparing to HS2, which is just the fairly simple, frankly, bit of high-speed line running through the countryside. So that ignores going through complex city approaches, which in Europe either don't exist because they run it on the existing network, or it's its own project. It's kind of bunched in as a different project. A way to get around that is rather than going, we're delivering this whole big project and it's called HS2, you'd go, well, we're delivering this section, which is from the southern end of the West Midlands through to the northern end of London. That's its own contract. That's being delivered.
What's your take on the Lenin Vanguard Party to install class consciousness? How long have you been in chat? You've been in chat long enough to know this. The idea of a Vanguard Party is fucking retarded, and it always has been. I know the class disparity. The problem with capitalism is that the people who make political decisions occupy a different political class than the proletariat. The bourgeoisie are the ones making the calls. I know how I'll fix this. I'll create a new, separate political class of people after abolishing the bourgeoisie, and they're the ones who make decisions on behalf of the proletariat. Fucking
as a thing. We're delivering Euston Station upgrade as one project, and all of these bits and pieces all stitched together. And as a result of that, by not delivering a program of work, by delivering it as one big hit, you end up with a very high unit rate, a high cost per mile. So that's number one.
Moving on to his second reason, Gareth explained more about why he thought the government's lack of commitment to the project was one of the reasons it's ended up costing so much.
Generally in the UK, we just have a low level of commitment to big infrastructure anyway. We don't spend enough on big strategic transport projects. Crossrail is the only other one that's going on before that, High Speed 1. We just don't deliver this work at enough scale. We do a big hit project and then we do nothing for a decade.
Lilith Transwitch, I'm not going to argue with you directly over this, but please remember that everything we now praise China for is stuff the United States was capable of doing back in the 1930s. Under all the stuff we now praise China for, FDR was doing that shit back then. Using the power of the state and like an overwhelming political mandate to keep corporations in line with state interests, directing them, engaging in like nationalization projects to better leverage like capital and using the factories to produce goods. We did that, and look what happened to us. It's entropy. It's entropic decay. Capitalism has one outcome, and it's all of us dead. We might get there faster than we expected too, the way the climate's looking. All China is 80 years behind, but I have a feeling they're going to catch up faster than we did.
We don't deliver enough of this type of work, and we should be delivering more of it. And as a result of that, the supply chain is not the right shape, not the right size, and that lack of government commitment means that prices will be higher, and that accounts for a substantial amount of the extra cost.
And finally, Gareth explains more about the fragmentation in the construction industry, his third reason as to why HS2 has cost more than expected.
Rather than relying on a series of large contractors who kind of do a lot of the work in-house, we have a huge number of SMEs, of small and medium enterprises that deliver little bits and pieces of the work, which means that we have to employ lots of lawyers to manage those contracts. It's difficult to get the right skills in the right place. As a result of that huge fragmentation, again, that adds as much as 20% extra onto construction project costs.
Now, these three setbacks haven't done wonders for the project, and it's fair to say that there's some...
And there will be far more, and it will never actually be finished, much like California's high-speed rail.